Hi everyone, I'm David Fisher, and this is Presidential Chronicles, the series of books and videos on American history as seen through the lives of the Presidents of the United States. This episode is from the life of Benjamin Harrison, and the focus is busy lame duck and retirement. The year is 1893, a very difficult time for Benjamin Harrison. He'd lost his wife, he'd lost his re-election, but he was not done being President of the United States yet, because during the interregnum there were a couple of key issues that still came across his desk. The first was a death on the Supreme Court. Lucius Lamar, an Associate Justice on the court, died January 23, 1893, just 6 weeks before the transfer of power. Now, we've had issues recently about whether or not a president should nominate someone for the court just in the tail end of their administration. Well, Benjamin Harrison didn't hesitate at all. He was still the president. He's going to do a nomination, but he took an interesting tack politically. He did not go with a Republican. He went with a Southern Democrat by the name of Howell Jackson. Howell Jackson was his former colleague when they had served in the U.S. Senate together. He's kind of a moderate Democrat. Again, he's from the South. So Harrison, even though it was late in his term, he'd already been defeated for re-election. He still put forth a nominee, but he was looking at sort of the political realities of the world to get that nominee confirmed, recognizing that the Democrats were coming into power. He put forward a moderate Democrat who was approved 2 weeks before the change of power. The other thing that occurred during the interregnum happened about 5,000 miles away in the island of Hawaii. Hawaii was an independent entity, a sovereign entity that had a royal government. The United States, or Americans on the islands, numbered less than 2,000, but many were pretty prominent, especially as business owners in the agricultural sector. And there was some backlash against maybe American involvement, a little too much trying to push the locals from a government standpoint. And so the Queen, Liliuokalani, decided to make a change to the Constitution that actually took away some powers from foreigners. Well, there was a backlash against that. In fact, it went beyond words. It went into rebellion, where there was a rebellion against the royal government. This is where the American minister, John Stevens, actually got involved. Stevens had long been a proponent of the American annexation of Hawaii, and he took the chance as he saw it. While this rebellion was kicking off, he went to the USS Boston, which was in the harbor at the time, got 160 Marines, a couple of pieces of artillery, brought them into the fight on behalf of the rebellions, and that pretty much brought the fight to the end because the royal government had no way to counter this force from the United States. And so they stood down, and this overthrow of the government then actually had further action by the United States, because Stevens on his own authority actually claimed a protectorate over the Hawaiian Islands on behalf of the United States, and even said it was okay to send the American flag up above government buildings in Hawaii. Now, he did this on his own authority, in part because the telegraph didn't reach all the way to Hawaii yet, but by the time word got to Washington, D.C. and President Harrison was basically on board. He said, I'm in favor of annexation. Let's get this thing going. Have Hawaii send me some emissaries. Let's get a treaty negotiated here in Washington as quickly as possible. Let's see if we can get this done before the end of my term. Well, that's what happened. And by February the 14th, a treaty was in place. It went to the Senate, and then it got paused. The Democrats did not have a majority in the Senate, but they had enough to stop a supermajority, the 2/3 needed to put a treaty forward. And their belief was, look, the election was just held. A new president is coming in. He's a Democrat. We should give Grover Cleveland the opportunity to weigh in on something like this, not jam it through at the last minute. Well, when Cleveland came in, Day 5 of his second term, as he's now back in office, he actually pulled the treaty from consideration because he was getting some word that maybe the United States was a little too involved in this action. And so he actually sent his own emissary to the islands, who reported back really two things. Yes, indeed, the Americans were very involved in sort of getting this thing over the top for the rebellion to be completed, including that force of arms. And number two, it did not appear to the emissary that, frankly, the local Hawaiians really wanted annexation at the time. So Cleveland just tossed it in the garbage heap. There would be no annexation on his watch. Hawaii would eventually be annexed by William McKinley in the next administration, and of course, half a century later would become the 50th state. Kind of a messy end here on the foreign policy side of things when it came to Hawaii at the end of the Harrison administration. Well, there was a peaceful transfer of power between Harrison and Cleveland. 4 years before, they had gone from the White House to the Capitol together. Now they switched seats. As Harrison on his way out, Cleveland coming back in to take his oath of office on March the 4th of 1893. Harrison himself, he was tired. He was still in mourning. He was ready to go home to Indianapolis. He's 59 years old. He's got to figure out what to do. And the one thing he didn't want to do initially was politics. He didn't want to have anything to do with politics right away. And one opportunity that came his way, he was actually really excited to take. Senator Leland Stanford, who had just recently started a university of his same name, Stanford University in California, wanted to bring some notoriety to his university. And so he was asking folks like a former president, Benjamin Harrison, come on out, give some speeches, I'll pay you $25,000. This will be sort of good for everyone. Well, Harrison was happy to do that. He loved to travel, made the trip. He gave 6 speeches. Not really political in nature. It was more of a history lesson, if you will, of the United States, the founding, the structure of government. It was reasonably well received. In fact, he took all those lectures, he turned it into a book called This Country of Ours, which is also pretty popular, including internationally. It was translated into 5 different languages, chance for people around the world to sort of hear how the United States was started and the overall structure of government. And it was a good thing to keep him busy at this time. Well, a couple of years now into the Cleveland administration, Harrison's been away from politics for a little bit of time, and he's asked to do something that got him back in the game a bit. Levi Morton, who had been his vice president, was now running for the governor of New York, and he wanted Harrison to join him on the campaign trail and give a speech on his behalf, and Harrison agreed. Came out, gave a speech that was obviously pro-Morton. He was very much in favor of him, but also pretty much attacking the Democrats. He didn't like what the Cleveland administration was doing. And you got to remember at this point, the country was not doing well economically. Just a couple of months into Cleveland's term, basically a recession happened, a panic of 1893 it was called, a really tough time economically for the country. And Harrison was basically blaming the Cleveland administration and the Democrats in part because they were trying to go after his high tariff that he had put in. The new administration is trying to take it down. And he said, my countrymen, let us stop this war on American industry and American homes. Let the greatest of the manufacturing states, by her people in this election, speak in a voice that shall be heard from ocean to ocean in condemnation of those who have brought these disasters upon the country. I believe that will be the verdict of the country in favor of his policies and against what the Cleveland administration had tried to do. Well, a couple of things kind of came from this. Number one, people were thinking, is Harrison thinking about getting back into politics? This was a political speech. He's taken on the opposition. Does he want to run again, maybe in 1896, kind of do a Cleveland where you take a gap administration, come back and run for another one? Well, Harrison was not interested in that at all. He made it clear the repugnance to further public service deepens with me every day. He was not interested in running for office again, but he was interested in having a say, and he was interested in his political points of view and some of the strategies that he had put forward. And so when William McKinley got the Republican nomination in 1896, Harrison's completely on board. They're like-minded on the tariff, no question about that. But he was also adamantly opposed to the Democrat who was put forward, because by now the silver lobby had basically taken over the Democratic Party. And William Jennings, Bryan, a 36-year-old former congressman, got the nomination for the Democrats. And this caused Harrison a lot of concern, because not only did Bryan want more silver into the mix, he wanted that free coinage of silver, which Harrison had never supported previously. Even though he supported bimetallism, he did not support free coinage, as we talked about in a previous episode, and he just thought that was going to be a recipe for disaster. Now, there's some irony in the following statement, in which he said the free coinage of silver now is the financial and moral equivalent of a declaration that 50-cent pieces are dollars. They might just as well pass a law that half dollars are dollars. That would not make it so, would it? Well, it would be a legal dollar, but it would not buy a dollar's worth of anything. He was very much against this idea of the depreciating silver against gold, where you're basically giving yourself a discount because you're using a different metal. He believed that silver had a role in the economy, but he thought that you could keep the ratio of gold to silver static. And the fact is, that was not possible. And so while he was against free coinage of silver, the fact is even his policies on silver were contributing, or definitely had a contributing role to the panic that kicked off in 1893, that drove some of the instability in the financial markets, put the Treasury, frankly, at risk for insolvency as the Treasury was being let out of gold for some of those silver purchases. So it's easy to sort of point fingers at the guy in the seat right now, but there was no question that there were actions decisions under the Harrison administration, particularly on the currency, that did lead to some of the economic distress that occurred in Cleveland's second term. Well, McKinley won this race in 1896. In fact, he won it pretty easily, so the high tariff was back in policy mode. You also got hard currency, as McKinley was going to be solidly for the gold standard, so that's where the country was going to be moving on. Change in the personal life of Benjamin Harrison. So we know he lost his wife, Carrie, his close partner for 39 years, just before the recent election, his own re-election campaign. Well, it turns out that he not only was lonely, he was seeking companionship. And he found that companionship in the arms of Mary Dimmick. Mary Dimmick is a name we referenced a couple of episodes ago. This is Carrie's niece, his wife's niece, who actually had lived with them in the White House for part of his presidency. She herself, 37 years old, she'd been a widow for 14 years. She's 37, he's 62. Pretty soon they're together, they decide to get married. One obstacle is Benjamin Harrison's kids, Russell and Mamie, did not approve of this. Harrison actually wrote a letter to his son that my life now and much more as I grow older is and will be a very lonely one, and I cannot go on as now. A home is life's essential to me, and it must be the old home. Neither of my children live here, nor are they likely to do so, and I am sure they will not wish me to live the years that remain to me in solitude. Well, maybe yes, maybe no, but they did not approve and did not show up when Harrison and Dimmick got married on April 6th of 1896 at the St. Thomas Protestant Episcopal Church in New York City. The couple welcomed another child into the world. This would be Harrison's third daughter. Elizabeth was born less than a year later. Harrison had a little bit more work to do in the courtroom. He went back and took some cases. He was very selective. Usually if he could get a high retainer, kind of pick and choose his cases. He did win one case in the Supreme Court where he was hired to challenge the constitutionality of the inheritance tax laws in Illinois. He took that case to the Supreme Court and won. But his biggest case actually came from his successor's presidency. A land dispute between Great Britain and Venezuela in South America. The Americans got involved. In fact, Grover Cleveland got personally involved as this became a very contentious issue. And with Cleveland's nourishment in the right direction, they actually went to arbitration. Britain agreed, as did Venezuela, that they would arbitrate the dispute. Well, Venezuela decided to hire the former president, Benjamin Harrison, to represent them in this arbitration case. And he spent the next year pouring into this one, sort of night and day, doing everything he could to become an expert on this particular issue. So the following year, it was off to Paris, where he was going to do the final hearing against the British. He was confident. I hope Venezuela is satisfied with the work we have done, he said. My confidence in the case grows with the increasing study of it. Certainly Great Britain has wholly failed thus far to bring forward anything, an argument that can give us any alarm. Well, the Brits went first. They had 52 hours of presentation over the course of several days. Harrison was up next, 20 hours over 5 days. Then the result, major disappointment for Benjamin Harrison and the Venezuelans. The panel consisted of 2 American judges, actually both from the U.S. Supreme Court, 2 British judges, and a jurist from Russia was the 5th and more supposedly independent person. But they came back unanimously in favor of Britain on almost all the key issues. Venezuela won a couple of things here and there. Harrison was very disappointed in this. He thought they frankly got it wrong. He felt there was political intrigue going on behind the scenes, and this was not a fair result from an arbitration case, but this would be really his last attempt at a major case from a legal standpoint, kind of ending that legal career on a bit of a sour note. Harrison did come back home then after that, found his country at war. William McKinley took the United States into war with Spain over activities in Cuba. There were issues going on in Puerto Rico and Guam and the Philippines as well. This was one of the first signs that the United States actually moving into more of an imperialistic kind of global power, which is not something that Harrison was really in favor of. Harrison said, let us not be a world power in any sense save the good old sense, that of a nation capable of protecting in all seas the just rights of its citizens and incapable everywhere of a wanton infringement of the autonomy of other nations. The United States had never been an imperialistic nation. That seemed to be changing a bit with William McKinley, and then with Theodore Roosevelt coming in after the turn of the century. That was going to continue to move in a different direction. Harrison was not a big fan. Things were coming to near the end for Harrison. He's now 67 years old in early 1901. He gets an illness, he gets a cold, it turns into pneumonia, and he would not recover. Died quietly March the 13th of 1901 with his second wife by his side. In many ways, Harrison did live a storied life. He lived up to the very lofty expectations that came with someone who had had a great-grandfather who had signed the Declaration of Independence and a grandfather who had been the President of the United States. Well, he did just fine in and of himself. He was a leader in the Army. He was a top lawyer, became a top lawyer, politician. He picked his spots at the state level, at the national level, served in the Senate, and of course served one term as President of the United States. The question is, why is he so anonymous? Most people don't really remember Benjamin Harrison. What is it about his presidency that lends itself to so much anonymity for a presidency that actually was fairly involved in quite a few things? And so we can only speculate what some of those reasons were. Number one, the key issues at the time, the tariff and the currency, frankly don't have any resonance in the 20th century anymore because we don't really think as much about those elements of the economy nearly as much as we did in their era when it was front and center. Now those issues certainly much more in the back burner, if at all, and the currency we don't really think about since we've been off the gold standard for the last 50 years. Of course, the Cleveland administration actually reversed out a number of Harrison's policies, so maybe there wasn't a lot of traction there. He didn't have a lot of political followers to kind of pick up the mantle and carry it forward going forward. So it was an active presidency and a very active life of public service for Benjamin Harrison, but in the end, pretty anonymous as far as posterity is concerned in overall the life of Benjamin Harrison. And that is Benjamin Harrison and his busy lame duck and retirement from the life of Benjamin Harrison. For more presidential chronicles, check out my books on Amazon.com and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm David Fisher and this is Presidential Chronicles.